session of panel discussion on emerging project export opportunities in new sectors and markets and experience sharing by Indian project exporters. In this interactive session, we have with us leading professionals from Indian project exporters. I welcome on the stage Shri Rajanish Chopra, Global Head, Vatek Wabag Limited. Shri Pankaj Tandon, Chief Operating Officer, Transrail Lighting Limited. Shri Nagendra Kaushal, President Business Development, Kalpataru Power Transmission Limited. Shri Sumanta Chowdhury, President Business Techno-Electric and Engineering Limited. And Shri Abhitabh Rawal, Additional General Manager, International Operations Division, Bharat Heavy Electricals Limited, as panelist for the session. As earlier said, the session was to be moderated by Shri Pankaj Kalani, who is now not available. So in his place, this session is moderated by Mr. Shiva Kumar, who is General Manager in India Exim Bank, heading the Business Development Group. Over to you, sir.
Thanks, Mithali. Very distinguished dignitaries, Indian project exporters, including many of our esteemed clients, aspiring project exporters, colleagues from peer institutions, ladies and gentlemen, a very good evening. I'm very happy to be part of this August panel, and I'm additionally delighted to moderate this panel. The previous panel had shared some data points and shared their experiences, which will serve as a reference point for the discussion in this panel. Before I ask some questions to this panel and seeking their views, I want to share a small analysis which can set as a backdrop for the discussion. In fact, while there's a lot of challenges in collecting the data of project exporters, based on whatever data we have on project exports, which gives a range, comparing with the total exports, both merchandise and service, project exports accounts to a very, very meager percentage of share. This is at one end. On the other hand, we have a lot of established companies executing marquee projects, not only India, but overseas also. This shows the immense potential which is available for the project exporters overseas. Given this backdrop, I want to ask 3 questions to this August panel and seek their views. The first question I want to ask is, what are some of the new sectors and markets, geographies, which you feel are emerging, which gives new potential for these Indian project exporters? If you can share some of your personal experience, it will be great. Maybe I'll start from the right.
Thank you, Mr. Shivakumar. See, I think you have a very valid question. I think market has gone under a transition post-COVID. And as global organizations, we are all reworking on our strategy. Now, if I look at project exports, today, Vatek Wabag, we have already credentials of having delivered projects in 30 countries across 4 continents, including Europe, LATAM, Asia, Middle East, Southeast Asia, Indian subcontinent. I think we have a lot of credentials. Our projects, normally, one of the key things which I want to share is, there was a time when, an Indian project exporter, when we were, quoting a project, normally in countries like Middle East, Southeast Asia, they would feel that maybe our quality may not be as per global standards. But today, that has totally changed. We have delivered a lot of projects which have been recognized at the global level as some of the best projects in desalination, some of the best projects in wastewater, some of the best projects in water treatment. So that thing has changed. Middle East, which had a certain bias towards the West, today they feel that they can get the same quality from India at a much lower cost. Now, this is one thing. So coming back to the question, now we are looking at Southeast Asia. We have done projects which have been funded by multilateral agencies like JICA, ADB, World Bank, KfW, to World Bank. We have already executed projects. We are well versed with that. As far as buyer's credit is concerned, we have done a lot of projects from Europe using the local Exim banks to execute the projects in the past in our long history of 90 years. And today, our journey started from India with all support from Exim Bank, and we bagged first project. In fact, that was the first project for Exim also in project exports in Sri Lanka. So we started with that, and we are currently in the final stages of our second project. I think our overall experience of dealing with the Exim Bank has been quite satisfactory. Definitely there are current challenges in Sri Lanka, and I'm sure together we'll address that. Now, we were looking at stance, for funding projects. Now today, given the current geopolitical situations, we have kept it on a wait and watch. We are continuously monitoring all our markets in the stance and in the Eastern Europe. So we are not going very aggressive in that. But definitely we are looking at Southeast Asia. We are looking at Sub-Sahara Africa. In northern part of Africa, we have already executed a lot of projects. We executed one LOC project in Tanzania, again funded by the Indian government. So there are a lot of, so Africa, when I typically look at only the export projects where the funding is required, I think we are looking at very aggressively at Southeast Asia, as well as we are looking at Africa. Apart from that, in our neighboring countries, we have executed some multilateral funded projects in Nepal. Now we are looking at Bangladesh and Nepal as our neighboring countries where we want to explore project exports. In terms of sectors, definitely one of the key new emerging sector in water and wastewater space is, desalination. I think everybody is talking about renewable, everybody is talking about green hydrogen, and the raw material is water. So we have got a lot of inquiries already coming in terms of desalination of water for hydrogen projects. So that is a new market which is emerging, and I think that will give a lot of impetus to, growth in the sector. Another sector which is now taking shape is, definitely water in developing markets, because I think a lot of countries are committed to SDG 6, that's water and sanitation for all. And most of the countries, they have plans. Definitely COVID has, put a small full stop, but then I think now all the plans are being reworked, and that's one sector. The third sector is going to be recycle and reuse, since water itself, people have realized, is a very, very, scarce commodity. So recycle and reuse are three things, which we find are going to drive these markets going forward across the globe. But specifically related to funding, I have already mentioned the markets which we are looking at. We were looking at definitely all the stance, but we are currently put it on wait and watch. Thank you. With that, I'll...
Thank you, Mr. Chopra. Can I ask Mr. Kaushal to give his views?
Yeah. Thank you, everyone. Kalputru, we are doing in many countries, more than 35, 36 countries, we already executed our projects. And Africa and Europe, some part, and South Asia. Latin America, recently we entered, and we are doing EPC projects there also. So looking at this, as Mr. Chopra mentioned, that situation is because of COVID and because of recently Ukraine war, the overall international situation is becoming very now tough for Indian project exporters, looking for fundings as well as doing execution. So basically geography-wise, we have to see as an Indian exporter that which are the, what is our experience, which area we have a synergy, what is our capability, financially capability, and which are the acceptability of the particular country for the product, and what is our experience in India actually. We have done good in India, technology-wise and financially wise. They, I think, can move, look for an international business, and I mean, based on the requirement of those countries, very acceptable to them. So there are many sectors, like we are doing in energy sectors, like transmissions, like substation, distributions. We are doing also in road transports. We are also doing in the health sector, hospitals, like port construction also. So these are the sectors our group is doing. I mean, South Africa and Eastern, Middle East and South Asia, and some part we started recently, EPC success in Latin America. These are the regions where Indian exporters, project exporter product and their technology acceptable to, I mean, these countries. And but there are many hurdles, yes, looking at the today's situations. So based on the availability of multilateral funding, based on the availability of the funds from Indian Exim Bank support, or maybe other European, as Mr. Chopra mentioned, ECA, some European ECA supporting to particular countries, and maybe funding like some other, like JICA and all that things available to Indian exporters. So those are the sectors and those are the regions. And I mean, these successful stories are available for Indian companies like our company, our here sitting other companies. So they have very good experience, successful experience. They implemented the projects, and there is a good background branding, Indian branding. They are available. They are like the Indian, how they work, the professionalism, how we complete the job, and overall Africans, like regions, especially because our product and our technology is acceptable to those area. So they like more, so there is opportunity in this part. Like Middle East, as you mentioned, there is a lot of competition, a lot of, there are many hurdles about technology. Like South Asia, there are other issues like energy sector. If you go, then you will face another, Chinese are there, Koreans are there. They have special funding for their countries. And they are special, you can say that they support their companies. So very chances are like they do project on boot basis, PPP basis, where Indian companies are not able to do. So these are the areas, South Asia, Africa and Middle East. So based on the product, what project we want to do, and based on our, that overall situation in India, what companies doing in India, credibility and what is their experience and what is required in that country, they can explore. Yes, internationally is not easy. Doing a business in India and doing business in a country like Africa, many hurdles are there, many issues are there about how you're going to handle the labor, how you're going to, whether the machineries are available or not available, you have to carry from here, whether ROWCs are there in those countries, and many other things are there, like maybe recently coups are happening, like in Mali, Guinea, other countries, Myanmar recently. So these are other issues about region-wise. So once any Indian company is trying to expand in international business, then they have to look around there about the capability and the political stability of that country and then technology. So these are the things I think is required.
Thank you, Mr. Kaushal. Can I request Mr. Tandon to share his views?
Yes, sure. Thank you. So as to be very specific to your question, which are the countries or regions which are very attractive? So attractiveness will depend on your, so first of all, let me say generally, for project exports, Africa, LATAM, Southeast Asia, SAARC, all are very attractive for very different people. Now, how it is attractive to you depends on your return of experience, how you have been successful, how you have culturally have assimilated yourself, learned to do profitable project, because finally the project have to be closed and the guarantees have to be returned and the retention has to be realized. Then only the project is closed. Otherwise, this is only a work in progress. The biggest issue in international business, which I would subscribe, is culture. How you are, learning to work in that environment. You may be very successful in Africa, but you may not be very successful in Southeast Asia. Have you understood the legalities, the compliances? 30-40% of the project exporters are running issues of taxation in the countries where they have worked. So they are either they are contingent liabilities or the liabilities which has to be, provided. So I think those are the things which we have to keep on assessing, as Kaushal has also mentioned about your capabilities, your synergies, your understanding, your return of experience. So that's it.
Thank you, Mr. Tandon. Can you also touch upon some of the new sectors which you think could be potential for the project exporters?
So we are into primarily into transmission and distribution sector. With growing urbanization in our own sector, the cabling will be another area which will be coming to because of the distribution and the beautification of the cities, urbanization. The cabling will definitely take off, which is already being done. We have just recently been awarded a project in Suriname, and in other similar projects are coming up in many African cities as well. And all the gamut of activities what India does, like water is there, like Africa is a developing economy. It is driven by a very young population, so the consumption will be required. So these things will be driven by, wherever the developing economy will throw up the opportunities, and the economies which have been doing these systems, which has to be renewed now. So like LATAM is another place. Europe is coming up with new opportunities where things have to be revived and the new things have to be laid up.
Thank you, Mr. Tandon. Can I request Mr. Chowdhury to share his views on various new geographies, sectors, which is available for the Indian project exporters?
Yeah. Hello. So, first of all, our company has been well entrenched in the domestic market, in the power sector, transmission distribution sector, covering the substations primarily, and also in the heavy industries. We are known both for mechanical and electrical projects for last more than 60 years. We have been a more or less conservative company, but we have done and met our targets, whatever our company has set, corporate side. And we ventured into the international market. We are known for the, first of all, in India, we are known for the quality. We are not gone for the top line. We have gone for the bottom line and also the quality aspect in the domestic market. That is the mindset of Techno Electric. With that in mind, about 7 or 8 years back, we went into the international market. First of all, we went as a joint venture partner for the substation portion with our old friend Kalpataru in Uganda. I think it was for substation, it was around 20 million US dollars. And the experience was pretty good. Okay. Of course, the local issues also in Uganda was not much, at least what we could not face. It was a good project executed. That was one. Then we went in Afghanistan in a challenging territory. So that is around 40 million US dollars, ADB funded project, which 90% of the billing is done. Unfortunately, thereafter, the country, you know, what it came to, it is a standstill. Even the financing authority, ADB, is not there at the moment. But our experience in executing up to 90% has been good from the company's point of view. That is one part of it. The balance 10%, whatever, we need to complete the project. But since it has to be renegotiated, whatever it is. The funding agency, whether they will come back or whether Afghanistan government will fund in a different way, that is to be seen. So that will be almost a different project altogether. But our experience was not bad in that difficult territory. We didn't have any major mishap or anything like that while executing them. We kept a low profile and we did the job till date. Thereafter, we went into Exim Bank funded LOC project in Togo, West Africa. It was a small project, around 12 million US dollars. But since Exim Bank was there, we were sure that we'll go through. And only one issue has come up there. You know, after this COVID situation, the sea transport freight, it has gone up like anything. So controlling the costs, particularly on the transportation or the other items, is a challenge. So that is the challenges and the areas which a project exporter has to handle. So we will do in our own way. We, just before the COVID situation, we did participate in globally in many of the countries. Africa, East, West, South, everywhere we have participated. And most of the places we qualified technically. On the price part, we do have, why we, in the substation area, all Indian exporters, I feel, do have an issue as far as the Chinese are concerned. Competing with them is an issue, is a big issue. And whether it is LOC or whether it is your bias credit route, that also is an issue. The Chinese get the funding. We lost in Kenya. We were with Exim Bank, you know, through a bias credit route. we're almost sure of getting the project. In fact, I signed the also MOU with the Kenyan government, but that also went for a toss ultimately. And the Chinese went through with a different financing model. So Exim Bank will also we have to sit together and think how we can move forward, how this can be carried forward. Because our normal system of funding for a buyer's credit route, I think that will not work out as far as the substation projects are concerned. But in a substation project, almost 75% is your equipments, substation equipments. So that is another area. Then as far as SAARC countries are concerned, see there we qualify in all SAARC countries. Afghanistan also we are executing job. But in Bangladesh and Sri Lanka, Indian companies do qualify, but Indian products are not approved. Even MNCs who have the major manufacturing hubs in India, like ABB, Siemens, or GE, even their products from India for transformers, relay control panel, automation system, or even switch gears from India is not acceptable to Sri Lanka. See the better the country has come. We went in recent tender, we participated in Sri Lanka before their turmoil. Technically, we went through. Price-wise, we are the highest. Compared to our competitors were 3 Chinese, and 1 was Mitsubishi with a local associate. We are nowhere there. So basically, I know what is the costing of a product, what we do. We did in the same way. But even if I was L2 or L3, it was different. But the products are not Indian-based, manufacturing-based. It is all from, even from ABB, I have to take from Sweden or from Switzerland. From Siemens, also from Germany. So that is how they allocate the market, the MNCs. So that is an issue that needs to be handled. As far as the other markets are concerned, we ventured into Latin America, but we didn't go in a big way. But I think there's a tremendous opportunity there, Latin America. I would rate it over and above, though there is a time lag and a lot of other issues, but I would rate it higher than the Southeast Asia. Because Southeast Asia, again, acceptability is a problem. And when coming to the SAARC countries, our neighboring Bangladesh, I would like to point out here, see, there even, they give some peculiar clauses. Like we in India, we do up to 765 kV substations, whether AIS or GIS. We are well entrenched in that. Bangladesh is just the other side of Kolkata. The climate, the culture, everything is same. There they will put a clause that you have to have, this is the experience, which we all satisfy, but you need to have a third country experience where of the same 400 kV you have to have done. We have not done a 400 kV. See, in a small country like Denmark or France or the European countries, what was their market? Their market was very small. So they didn't have anything to do. So they had to go to overseas market. And that is how they developed that qualification. And that same qualification is being adopted by Bangladesh. So 400 kV becomes an issue. Up to 220 kV, there's no issue. So these are things which the government of India also needs to take up. We had taken up through CIA in Bangladesh, but those have not been resolved. Bangladesh being a neighboring country, even for relay control panel and automation system, they clearly specify they will only take from the European base, not from ABB India, not from Siemens India, not from GE. So anyway, that is what I wanted to share with you. There are challenges, but export market is huge and we should go in for that. But the quality aspect has to be always kept in mind. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chaudhary. May I request Mr. Raval to share his views?
Good afternoon, members of the audience. Good afternoon, my panelists. Good afternoon, moderator. Before I answer your question, I will not say that I'm fortunate to be the last speaker or the first speaker. Rather, I would say I'm fortunate to be present here and to have this opportunity to participate in this discussion. It's really an honor and pleasure. So now coming to the question, what sectors and what countries for project exports? So before I talk about what sectors and what countries, I would like to talk about who are the Indian project exporters or the likely Indian project exporters. So these are the companies, Indian companies, who have the experience and the capability to deliver various projects across all sectors. These are the Indian companies which have, over the years, made our country almost self-reliant, be in sectors like steel, cement, power, construction, railways. You name the sector and we have companies which are capable of delivering excellent projects in such sectors. So it is the sectors, if you talk about sectors, I think it is an area open to the Indian companies. Whatever area of expertise you have, there's a demand for that sector outside. So now coming to countries, what countries we should go? There are many countries which are on the same development path as what we have been, what India has been. And they are following almost a similar development trajectory. So they are bound to have a similar kind of development experience, similar kind of challenges which the Indian companies have already encountered. So over a period of time, all these countries will need to have development of infrastructure of various sectors, and the Indian companies are well capable of handling those. So clearly there is a demand and there is a supply, both are there. So how do we choose in which sector and which country? It is, I think, more to be decided by the enabling factors. Now, what are those enabling factors? It could be the risk appetite of the company, of the Indian project exporter. What is your risk appetite and what is the risk mitigation measures which are available or which you think can be worked out? Then you also need to have a look on what is the approach, because the Indian government has a very big role to play in Indian project, facilitating the Indian project exports. So you also need to be aware of the priorities of Indian government, which countries are being supported through LOCs, through buyer's credit, or in future, what is the opinion of the Indian government, which countries are going to get that support. So probably we need to look at those countries. Then one more thing which was discussed in earlier discussions also was regarding getting the raw material. Most of these countries are rich in raw materials and we get the raw material from there. My opinion is a slightly more long-term on that initially these countries may start by sending the raw material, but ultimately they will realize at some point of time that this is not the best thing to do and they need to move up the value chain. So probably we can start with, in such countries, maybe we can start with some small maybe a mining process, but ultimately over the years we will have to graduate and move up the value chain. So it will throw up more opportunities for Indian project exporters as we go along. Then we also need to be mindful of the challenges. Various countries, as has been discussed, there are various, I would say, non-tariff barriers which prevent Indian entry into those countries. So probably we don't want to stumble on our first step, right? So we have to probably make a judicious choice of the country where we go, and gradually we have to move. As we do more and more projects, our acceptability would increase. And gradually we would be in such a position that we will be able to target the countries which have the so-called non-tariff barriers also. So in my opinion, the whole world and the whole sector is open for us. It is for us to grab that opportunity, and we gradually need to work our way so that we become the first choice of countries worldwide for project exports, for the requirement of projects. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rahul. That was a very optimistic view. In fact, I was holding this to ask as a second question. In fact, the two gentlemen already intertwined this in their response. If I may ask the panel, what are some of the issues or challenges that hold up the existing Indian project exporters to tap its full potential in the overseas market? I can give a small reference. When I was working in DC a few years back, when I was working in Exim Bank's Washington DC office, we used to work closely with World Bank, and in one of the analysis they were saying Indian companies' share in multilateral fund of projects in India is relatively high vis-a-vis what they have a share in the outside India. So what could be some of the issues, challenges which hold up our Indian companies to get their due share in overseas markets? So if I may ask in the order of Mr. Rahul, which is used in the last panel.
I think the challenges are numerous, and I would start with the challenge that we face from within. So the first challenge, I think, is the willingness of the Indian companies to go and work abroad. So over the years, not many Indian companies are used to working outside of India, and in India also, it has been a very well-regulated market, and we are used to working in tenders, in very well-defined procurement processes. We have got strong legal systems, well-defined regulatory systems. So we are used to working in that kind of systems. But when we are talking of potential markets like Africa, neighboring countries, Southeast Asia, CIS countries, the scenario might be entirely different from what we are used to working. So we have to be mindful of that fact, and it is more of our willingness to go out and explore and to overcome those challenges. So this is the internal issue that I think most of the companies face to take the first step. And then there are several, once you start going, it is not that I want to do it, so I'll just go and do it. It doesn't work that way. There are many challenges that we face when you go on the ground. And these challenges could be in the form of, even in the form of how a project has been conceptualized. I think if a project is not well conceptualized, it is bound to run into problems and cause problems for the project exporter, for the country where the project is being set up, for the financer, for everyone. So the conceptualization of the project. For example, I cannot have a very good DPR for a power project and go ahead with the construction of the plant without the country or the consultant having conceptualized the fuel linkages, the power offtake, all those things. If they are not finalized, then the project is bound to go into trouble sooner than later. So the conceptualization of the project, then the availability of the local material, local manpower, how do you estimate for those factors? It is very difficult to sit here and estimate for these things for doing a project, say in CIS or in Africa. So we need to venture out, go to these places and have a first-hand experience of what the costing is going to be. Because ultimately, if you do not get the costing right, you are in trouble, you are in deep trouble. Then we have the regulatory requirements. Several times we are not aware of the taxation issues of the various legal requirements, and we end up in problems. Then we may have issues related to the local employment. There may be rules which mandatorily require that you have a minimum local presence or a branch office or a registered office. Something has to be set up. Those things people are not aware. So I think it is the willingness of the Indian companies and the awareness of the local conditions which is a key to success in the project exports.
Thank you, Mr. Raval. Can I request Mr. Chowdhury to share his views?
See, what Mr. Amitabh just now mentioned, I repeat it in a different way. See, first of all, the most important part is the company's willingness and a well-defined policy for going in for the exports projects in a particular country. So that will entail a lot of other things, preparation, including the manpower planning, localization of yourself. The company has to localize itself. You have to do the job in that country. It may not be purely construction job. It may be an EPC job involving design, engineering, supply, like for a substation. But you need to know the local conditions. You need to know the statutory requirements. You need to know the taxation requirements. You need to know the local markets. You need to know the competition level. So this is one part the company has to decide. Number two, financing is a very important thing where it is a, say, a buyer's credit route, okay, where we require the the financing agency to work hand in hand to us, particularly with the Exim Bank is trying to promote the buyer's credit route. They have to work hand to hand. What is the practical thing, including getting involved in the marketing side? That's very important. So you need to select the market in that way. See, like a new market in Central Asia, Latin America, these are good markets, I'm telling you. But then the EPC company as well as the funding agency, they need to work together. There's a lot of buyer's credit opportunity, I think, in this country, particularly Latin America, it will be there. So how it is explored and how we work together, that will be very important. Africa, of course, is existing. There is another area. Now, the third one is the quality aspect. When a company decides to go in for a particular market, they have to ensure that the quality is maintained. See, ultimately, we are not representing only our own company when we go overseas. We are representing India. The relationship that matters. It is the Indian relationship with a foreign country. So we need to know also the government policies, which are the countries they are interested also. Of course, government saying alone does not help. Like government has got excellent relations with Bangladesh, but Bangladesh still has barriers as far as the products are concerned. There's a lot of barriers are there. They are a preference for the European market. Sri Lanka, we are trying to help them out of their difficulty. But Sri Lanka has an issue with the Indian products, even for a international funding agency. Okay, where it is a ADB funded, there also the EA is there. They will not take products from India. Siemens India may quote, but they will quote only as a EPC. All the equipments they will source from outside, not from Siemens India. It will be from Siemens Germany or elsewhere, they have to do it that way. It may be for allocation reason, whatever may be the reason. So these are the issues. So you have to export market, the opportunity is tremendous. But the conceptualization and the thinking has to be very clear from the company side as well as the government side. We need to walk hand to hand together and then decide. Quality EPC contractors should definitely go in for the export market. There's a huge opportunity for awaiting the Indian companies, and we need to grab it, but just not for the sake of grabbing it, for doing a real good job. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chaudhary. Can I request Mr. Tandon to share his views?
Yeah, thanks. So I would cover this issue on 3 parameters. And like exports is generic. Project exports, when we say, one is international bidding route, which is global. You have to fight against the whole world. Second is through LOC funded project. Third is when you become, like you take buyer's credit, etc. So definitely the challenge will be different. The approach will be different. But the overarching approach has to be, unless a company has its DNA of being competitive globally, of having that adventurous thought within the whole inherent adventure in thought itself, you can't be an exporter. Now, for example, as Mr. Chaudhary was mentioning about Bangladesh, can you believe Bangladesh has been doing projects since 2001, maybe earlier. But Indian companies, other than one Indian company in energy business, T&D, almost all big names went only in after 2012-13. Only when they got secured that it will be international fund will come, then we will participate. When LOC come, everybody went. Before that, nobody could capitalize other than one Indian company on the opportunities which were there, just next door. These are the things when you are present for a long time, that gives you an opportunity to work with the client, work with the local, environment, and convert many things what you want in the long run, which you think it is a barrier. That is how you remove barriers. You can't remove barriers in one day. Does India not have barriers? India also has barriers if we do a bidding like this. So we have to also understand the barriers will not go on its own. You have to be ready. If you have to fight in a bigger arena, then you have to be ready to face those challenges and to work towards it. Now that is one part of it. Second is quality. I remember going to a few countries earlier, and in a country like Myanmar, when I was going, I think it is 2014-15, every time there was a reference of one project done by one company, and all of us were branded for that bad quality. And unfortunately, there was a LOC-funded project. We all know what we are talking. Now, do we, as our co-panelist said, are we representing only one company? No, we are representing India. We are representing, as till today, why we say Japanese products are the best quality, why we still not having confidence on Chinese products, irrespective of the best things are being manufactured by Chinese. So that credibility also has to be created, and that is the onus is on us. Now, third is, which is one of my favorite, I would say, subject when I talk about international project, is again bringing the culture and language. Unless you win over the place where you are working, your long-term presence will never be giving benefit to you. We have to create sustainable presence there. When you create, for example, one of our, when we started doing projects in other places, we were taking around 60, 70, 80 people from India to do a specialized job. Today, we don't have to be dependent on Indian labor, Indian skilled labor. They're all present there. They themselves have groomed. So that is how you have to do that. In one of the projects we did, we took over a local manufacturer because it was a local funded project. And there was a 50% advantage to the local supply. We took over a local manufacturer. We put a 1% for 2 years on the quality. And that has become a manufacturer. And now there are 3 manufacturers in that country. And they are giving to international EPC players. So that is, I think one answer doesn't exist. There will be challenges, but the overarching thought has to be, you have to be adventurous, ready to match quality, best quality of the world, ready to fight with the best in the world. And that is the only way to do projects abroad.
Thank you, Mr. Tandon. May I request Mr. Kaushal to share his views?
Yeah. Mainly, I'll cover like the question I think related to the project exporter. They are already doing exports. What are the issues there to increase the business, right? Mainly last we have noticed 4 or 5 years, maybe 6 years, the multilateral funding has been reduced. Okay. So multilateral funding is not much available for the Indian to compete and participate in tenders. So earlier used to coming 2 billion or 3 billion per year, for all the sectors. Now reduced to maybe around 1 billion something. So you can see all the international companies, Europeans and Middle East and other part of the world, they are competing with the Indian, Chinese for this multilateral funding. So the cake has become smaller now. So because of that, Indian companies because over the period, the project exporters, they have a qualification to qualify in certain, markets. Like if we'll talk about energy sector, what we are doing, so we qualify in many areas. Like we have done a good job in India and done internationally also. So we qualify in many countries. But multilateral funding is not available. That is the main restriction now. So because of that, they reduce the business over the year. Then few countries, the multilateral funding is available. But they give preference to the local, like you go to eastern part of European country like Bulgaria, like Albania. So funding is there for energy, but you have to have a local partner with them. So this is like a restriction for Indian companies. And then there is the qualification issues in certain areas. We are facing, maybe other Indian companies are also facing. So, and then there is a funding from any internal Latin American banks where Indians cannot participate. So maybe our Indian banks like Exim Bank or maybe become partners with them and then try to, eligible Indian companies can eligible to those areas. So that funding also we can utilize certain extent to get opportunities, increase opportunities. Then second portion is that, the funding availability from Indian side, right? Like LOC and buyer credit, yes. But again, because of the recent COVID and this Ukraine war, the situation in many countries, sovereign guarantee, issues are there because the country's situation deteriorated now. The priority has changed. So, IMF has put a lot of restriction on them. So, to meet the IMF guidelines, to take this funding, proposed to them, then again we have a limitation sector-wise, for company-wise, like for our company, Indian banks, because yes, they have to distribute, right? So, accordingly, the size of today in energy sector, we have more than 1 billion project, but we don't have funding. We have contracts in our hand. Funding is not there. So, we can increase the business multifold. The issues are there, the multilateral funding is reduced. We are not getting support from ECAs and from Exim Bank because of certain other guidelines of that country and certain restrictions from our country. So, and then recently changes in the country situation, market situation about Ukraine. So our Minister of External Affairs is also, thinking of those issues, which country is good for India, which is not good for India. Those equations are going on. And these are the funding issues. Then when Indian companies goes there, like previous panels, they mentioned that taxation issues. Yes, many countries, they put a taxations and without any, support. And we are paying extra taxation in many countries. They ask whether it's buy credit, whether it's LOC. So when you face this kind of situation, you are not, feel good to work in that country because your profit margins are reducing, your project become unviable. Then you try to look for another market. So those are the issues are there to increase the business. So basically the relationship more market informations, the banking relationship with that country, and more funding to Indian, exporters, and then Indian banks having a relationship with other international banks. So like ECA, we can have joint with some other ECAs, and we can do 50% from India, 50% from other ECA, and then you can reduce the content because yes, some areas we are not able to meet the content because the product is so high that you have to import from. It is not available in India. So you have to outside, European country or some other country. So you have to use another ECA. So those kind of things we are also exploring, but it is taking time. So during this, it taking 3-4 years to work out a one project. Like we sign a contract maybe 2019, but today still we are not able to finalize. So 3-4 years is taking a project exporter to conclude the business. So that's why the Indian project export is coming down. So how to increase it? These are the main, I think, issues are there.
Thank you, Mr. Kaushal. Can I request Mr. Chopra to share his views?
Thank you. See, I'll maybe, answer your question a little differently. See, we have a lot of exposure to doing projects overseas which are multilaterally funded. Now, we have a lot of experience when we are implementing these projects in different geographies, although every geography is different, but then there are certain commonalities which we encounter. Now, if we have to promote Indian exporters, and if we are going to provide financing either through buyer's credit or through LOC, from the Indian side, I would not talk about the challenges, but based on our learning, I would definitely like to share some suggestions. I think the first thing which we found was that, I think earlier also it was spoken, we need to appoint a very good consultant. The quality of DPR, these are developing markets, they do not have today the capability and the capacity to develop that. So if we, the funding agency itself can appoint a good consultant who can, come out with a good DPR which can ensure that high quality exporters and high quality projects are given a top priority, I think that is something which will improve our image overseas and also help us gather more projects which may not be funded by the Indian financial institutions. The other factor which we learned from, our jobs, which we did for multilaterals, is that most of the projects are design, build and operate. In our case, when Indian government is funding, I think it is more of the capex. Even in multilaterals, it is always the capex. But the O portion is definitely funded by the local body or the local government or a state government. I think that is something which we should incorporate in our projects also. That will ensure that these projects are done well. And based on my own experience with interacting with a lot of governments across the world, what I found is that if we start the operations after building the project, and when we are doing that, we hire a lot of local people there. We train those people. We develop their capacity and capability to run those projects. So if the asset creation is done, operation and maintenance of these projects becomes very, very critical. And that is something where definitely we can add value. Then in some countries today we are feeling that we have a risk. I think we can definitely look at some of the African countries where in terms of raw material, somebody already spoke about the barter. I think some suggestions also came from some countries who are oil producing in Africa that they are willing to do so. One more thing which I would like to highlight is sometimes when we are giving the term sheets which you are providing, I think when the competition is there and a lot of people spoke about Chinese, I think Chinese, they may be giving very, very low cost of finance, but they have other charges also. But by and large, I found that when we have international competition, the delta has not been more than 1.5% to 2%. So in some deserving cases, if government can give a subvention of 1.5 to 2%, I think it can definitely help us bag much more projects in international competition. Another factor, while since I am personally also involved in exploring Africa currently, so all our financing is in dollar terms, especially in francophone countries. All their currencies are pegged to euro. So today, if we can also consider euro as a currency, if we can give those term sheets, it can definitely help us have a better impact in the western part of the Africa. So these are a few suggestions which came to my mind when I was comparing what we do when we are doing a multilateral funded project and when we are exploring projects which are funded by Indian financial institutions. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Chopra. I think all the challenges you all shared.
Mr. Moderator, with your permission, if I can just
Please.
make a few, 2 points. One of the points Mr. Kaushal has already touched upon, one about the timelines. So timeline, when I would like to re-emphasize on that point that when we talk about timelines, it's not about the time for executing the project. That is something which is well within our control. But the gestation time of the project itself. At least in our sector, power sector, we have seen that the projects may take as long as even a decade to finally to have boots on the ground. So if we are talking of that kind of timelines, in between that time, plenty of things can happen. There could be a war which starts somewhere. There could be a disruption in the supply chains. There could be increase in the prices, so many things. So whatever contracting we do, we need to be careful about how we take care of all these things. This is point number 1. And point number 2, again, drawing from our experience in power sector, and I'm sure that this is other project exporters are also facing this issue. It is about most of the countries about which we are talking, say the African countries, they are hitting their debt ceilings. So they have their IMF conditionalities and other things. They cannot borrow more, or they are fast approaching that threshold. So most of these countries, although they are hitting that threshold, but still they are in need of projects. So they want people to come and invest and develop the projects. It is not just the EPC contractors that are now welcome. IPP players for the project, power projects, they are more welcome than the EPC players. So these are also the new developments which are taking place. And at the same time, they want IPPs to come in, but they don't have the right kind of enabling infrastructure for the IPPs. So these are the challenges which are going to be there in the project export scenario. And at least in the power sector, we are facing it. I'm sure that in other sectors also, already these issues are coming up, or in the times to come, there will be such related issues.
Thank you, Mr. Raval. As I was mentioning, all the challenges which you all shared are very relevant, and we'll keep this in mind in case we are using this to develop some new products. While many challenges were discussed, one challenge which I was able to highly resonate was the challenge within, which I think the first 2 gentlemen mentioned. For the last 12 to 18 months, we have been traveling extensively across the country and meeting many companies, including some of the project exporters. In fact, some of the companies where we met along with the DMD, we found some project exporters having inhibition to go overseas. In fact, I still remember one company who was a market leader in their product category. They had an option to export under lines of credit to a Latin American country. When we were actually asking why you are not considering, they were having some inhibition or the other. They are saying, Indian market is so huge, there is a risk in that country, or no language barrier. So I think one of the major challenge I think we need to overcome is the challenge within, which is I think rightly mentioned. While we are almost on track in time, but with the permission of the audience, I want to take a few more minutes. Basically, I think I want to ask each panelist to take a 30-second to say a key takeaway or a guidance to the Indian project exporters if they want to enter into the overseas market. Maybe I'll start with Mr. Chopra, a 30-second key takeaway or guidance.
Yeah. So based on my experience, all I can share is that one is the patience. When you are entering into the new markets, there are always entry barriers. Where we are established, I think we welcome our competitors when they come from outside the same way. So we should be mentally prepared to have that patience. Secondly, we must have some strategic local partners. Like I can share an example that we are an EPC. So we do design, engineering, procurement, everything. So maybe for the construction part, normally we engage a local partner. So probably that helps us, smoothen out a lot of issues which are related to that particular market, because if it is for the first time with us, we have our own learning curve there. Third is the adaptability. Since we operate in a lot of different markets, I personally visit, so my main job is to develop new markets. So I think adaptability. I think the way I do the project here or the way I do the project in Austria, I may not be able to do the same project in Angola. So probably the adaptability is something which is, inherent in, exploring new markets. And secondly, we should always have, very good credentials in the markets where we are already established, whether India or overseas. I think a lot of people spoke about, preference for the Western products. I cannot mention about the products, but as far as projects is concerned, I think we have overcome all that, resistance from Middle East, from Southeast Asia, by bringing those customers here and, showcasing them projects in India. In fact, just to share, one very large project we did for Petronas, which is an oil and gas major in Malaysia. So when we showed them a project done by one of the Indian oil and gas companies, actually they were amazed. They couldn't believe that this is India and this is the kind of project we have. I think similarly today, a lot of people are coming and visiting one of our projects in Chennai, which is a recycle reuse project. Treated water is reused and supplied to industries. So a lot of people are coming from overseas to see that project. It's a global award-winning project. So I think these are a few things, and definitely, I think we need patience and perseverance. Without that, especially for project development, 2.5 years is a bare minimum time in which you can develop that. So the organizations also have to have that patience and invest for that particular period. And if I'm exploring 10 markets, if I'm able to open 3 or 4, I think, it's a very, very profitable proposition for Indian exporters.
Thank you, Mr. Chopra. Can I request Mr. Kaushal to give a 30-second key takeaway?
Yeah. Basically, Indian companies, export companies, whatever project they are doing here, they are maybe having good credibility, good turnover. Now they have a saturation here, so they may be looking for export business. So first, they should have a market information, fully market information, the funding availability, what kind of quality, what kind of competition will be there. I think they have faced the competition in India. So I think Africa is a market like domestic market for Indians, right? For most of the products. So if they face the same competition here in India, they will face same in African side. So, but they have to understand the complete market information about that country, about taxation, about the logistics, about the culture. And then Mr. Chopra mentioned the timeline is the main patience. It will take 2 to 3 years at least to convert one project. So you have to have that kind of, the financial things and your pricing and your product kind of things. So market information is must, because if you don't have market information, correct information, you will trap, it will be very difficult to come out from that particular market or particular area. And the funding, the payments, if you deal with directly with the government of African countries or maybe other countries where the credibilities or local LCs, I don't think it will work long term. So those issues can come, because in Indian banks are different and other international banks are different. So paymenting structures, you have to understand, you are getting from reputed kind of LC from reputed banks. And then your market information, then technology, what kind of technology you're offering to them. But one thing is sure, that once you commit them about the product, but you deliver them timely and give the good quality product, so that you don't spoil the Indian name, because it is a long-term effect. Other Indian company will go, they will again repeat that we cannot take Indian things because other company has spoiled, they are not doing good things. So it is very, very important, whatever you commit to that country, please fulfill it properly with the delivery time and the quality. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Kaushal. Can I request Mr. Andon to give a 30-second?
Yeah, so I'll save a lot of time because a lot of things have been already said, so I'll not repeat. One thing which it comes to my mind that the world has changed completely as we have been talking before Corona, after Corona, right? Now, what was being considered as granted in 1-2 years, the freight has, that cost of transport has changed everything. We have to, as a project exporter, I think we have to be exploring now the new supply chains near to the countries. We have to explore in a new way. That is something which is imminent today, because the changing of project specifications from fixed cost to price variations variable is not in your hand. You have to follow what the market does. So we have to find answers on that one. Second is project become, the country become unattractive for a management or for a company when you don't make money. Most of the projects suffer from inefficient, execution. It may be many reasons. One, what is inherently required for Indian companies is to monitor those projects from very efficiently from the day one, and timely decision making. We suffer from, most of the places, we suffer from indecisiveness, and then not taking decision worth 10 rupees cost you more than 1,000. So these are few things which I think which are very basic, but that is also most critical.
Thank you, Mr. Tandon. Can I request Mr. Chaudhary to again give a 30-second key takeaway?
I'll just put in short, the first thing, the 4 words are there. First is the focused market. What is the company's focus in that particular market? Next is quality. Third is adaptability, culture. You have to adapt the local culture. That's very important. You're working in an international market. And the fourth and not the least, I would say, is the collaborative approach. Collaborative with local agencies as well among Indian companies. That is very important. The Chinese take the collaborative approach. When it is their country, other companies are concerned. They go through a nodal agency, to my knowledge, and then one or two particular Chinese companies, they focus. It can be the same collaborative approach. It can be a consortium. And also the local agency or local contracting company who can do the local works, supplies of local materials, they have to be, we have to localize ourselves. So these are 4 approach: focus, adaptability, quality, and your collaborative approach. These 4 approaches are required. Then the company should go work on for export, and there's no sky is the limit. We can really do wonders. And many of the Indian companies, EPC companies, they will do wonders. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chaudhary. Mr. Raval, you're requesting you to give a 30-second key takeaway.
Okay, what I'm about to say is, it may sound quite counterintuitive, but nevertheless, my takeaway is that Indian project exporters have to stop relying too much on the LOCs and the buyer credit. So there is a limit to what buyer's credit and LOC can do. There are limits to the pockets of the government. And I mean, the multilateral agencies are funding projects much more than what the LOC or the buyer's credit are funding. So probably the LOC and buyer's credit can provide you a stepping stone, but beyond that, you have to develop your own capability. So my suggestion that do your homework properly, choose your battles wisely, and be prepared for the long haul. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr.
One
Raval.
point I would like to mention.
Please.
See, collaborative approach, the government is also included in that. Government means not only financing. Government means which particular country they want the Indian companies to concentrate. The government policy also decides that. With which country, what type of relations we want to develop in the long term, where India is comfortable as a country. So that should be focused upon. Not only in words, but in actual deeds. And the government also, along with the Indian company, needs to ensure that. That's very important. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. It was a very insightful discussion. I hope the audience also enjoyed. While a lot of perspectives were shared, one which made a deep impact in me is that I think a couple of speakers mentioned we don't represent only your company, but the entire country. I think which is more relevant for project exports more than products. In fact, I can relate when I traveled to one South American country. They were talking about one Indian EPC company which is a traffic signaling system. Many years back, they said if it is India, it is quality. So I think project exporters leave a mark which talks very highly about the country. And I'm very sure all stakeholders together, if you work as a team, we can make India achieve its full position in the Indian global market for project exports, the way India has done for sectors like IT or pharma. Thank you so much. It's a great experience in interacting with you and moderating. Thank you so much.
Thank you all the panelists and the moderator. May I now request DMD sir to hand over the customized Sankalp Taru certificates to the panelist. Shri Rajneesh Chopra. Shri Pankaj Tandon. Shri Nagendra Kaushal. Shri Sumanta Chaudhary. Shri Abitabh Rawal. Thank you. Thank you. May I now request DMD to open the floor for active interaction to the audience.